Hello everyone, this is the 14th week of our Kendo Talks, and we have a very special guest this week, Jose from Venezuela, a fourth dan from Venezuela. I cannot
Venezuela.
I cannot speak at the moment. I'm so sorry.
It's not an easy pronunciation, I guess. Venezuela.
Venezuela. Yes, sorry.
Mhm.
He runs a YouTube channel called Kendo Tips and loves making Kendo content so that people can learn more and learn handy things that you don't learn unless you've got a good senpai, basically. That's my best way of explaining your channel, I think.
That's actually pretty good. Never thought about it that way. Okay, cool. I'll be like that way, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. I like that better.
One sec, there's an issue with the audio at the minute. It's not picking up the Teams call. One sec. So the only audio is coming from the mic. So can you speak now?
Hello.
Yep, that's good. There we go.
Okay, cool. And now I got light too. It's good.
Yeah. There's always audio issues on this stream for some reason.
Audio is a tricky thing, especially because you cannot really see where the wires are going. And it's like, I know, it's all good.
So you're free to talk about whatever you see fit, really.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about, I guess, my Kendo life, if you want to say that. I started Kendo when I was in Venezuela, I think by 16, 15, more or less. And then, because the situation in the country had to leave, and I kind of stopped for like about 4 years because, I couldn't find dojo or whatever. Then I ended up testing for my EQ and on here in the United States. I started a club when I was in college in where, the university I was in. And that kind of helped me, get in contact with a lot of different people throughout my area, not necessarily my area because it wasn't Kendo where I lived, but within like 4 to 5 hour drive from where I was. And I kind of like started getting the joy of traveling because of Kendo. So kind of that helped me a lot to kind of make myself like the goal to like always travel and always bring my bogo with me. So wherever I go, I always try to like find ways just to like squeeze my bogo and find where the dojo is at. And the beautiful thing about Kendo is like if I say to somebody like, "Hey, I'm gonna be in your city," they'll probably go pick me up, like take me to practice, take me to dinner, and then take me back to the hotel. So it's like, and I'm willing to do the same for anybody that passes through. That even if you don't bring a bogu, it's okay. I got a bogu extra and I got shinai, so just bring your uniform, and even that I can probably find you. So
that is so.
So yeah, so I started. Was that?
That is so true. Like the Kendo community, honestly, across the world, seemingly at least in American and what I've heard, Europe is just so friendly. It's like just lovely.
All over, and that's one of the things that I really like about Kendo is that even though you can go to a competition and be competitive with people, we still kind of have an appreciation for each other, and we always go and even somebody beat me at a tournament, I can go to him and say like, hey, let's practice together at some other point, and next week I could be his dojo just having a great practice. It's like there's not that like very 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 little you see where that like ego kind of gets in the way of people getting better and in practice. And I think that even people with that ego, they kind of like realize it at some point and they just stop it. So that's one of the best things I think about Kendo. But anyways, so I started traveling when I was in college, and at some point later on after I graduated, I made it into the Venezuelan team and I competed with them in 2 world championships already and a few Latin American championships. And and because of that, it kind of triggered more and more travel, like whether it was like Europe, South America, even Japan. So for the last World Championship, I did a crazy thing, which I kind of not kind of I did. I quit my job and I went to live in Japan for like 4 months, right? And I practiced there for that time and I had like best time practicing kendo over there and doing the touristy stuff, but also mainly doing kendo. And then I came back, COVID hit, and now we're here. So, and one of the things with COVID, when this whole thing started, I kind of started realizing, okay, I miss like that communication with other people all over the place. So that's why it kind of pushed me to do more on my YouTube channel, because I've been having the channel for a little while, but I haven't been really like consistent and serious with it. But I kind of saw that opportunity to connect with more people through it, and because of it, being able to make more friends, and kind of the same thing that I was doing with traveling, but now I'm doing it virtually. So yeah, that's one of the things that I really like about what I'm doing right now.
That's really nice. And I think like a lot of other people have quite a similar history with kendo. Is like they come because it's interesting and they're like, oh, everyone's so lovely here, and or oh, I need to get better. I yeah, and they're like
Mm.
they I don't know, it kind of traps you in. I've heard kendo being called a cult, but I can only slightly agree.
Well, I mean, like you're not far off, I think, because I always say I'm a kendo addict, right? And it's funny because I work in the addiction treatment, right? So I can see a lot of the patterns, like the similarities, and it's interesting. Obviously, I'm not trying to say that like kendo's an addiction. Like it could be like anything else, but what I'm saying is that we have that a little bit of like that intensity towards just doing more, and I think that drive is what makes us get better, right? And one thing that I really like about a lot of things that I learned in kendo is that I can transfer those things to my daily life, right? So that especially that sense of self-awareness that I think you really need in kendo, it's really good to bring it into your day-to-day life.
Mhm. I completely agree. Having like self awareness is one of the things I most appreciate that I've learned from kendo, and I wish I could have put it into myself a lot earlier and just you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you got any funny
No.
stories that are mildly cringeworthy about somebody learning self awareness that they may not have previously had?
Do I have any cringy stories about enough? I mean, like, it's funny. Okay, I'll tell you a funny story. I have a friend that we talked a lot about kendo. He's actually very good. He's actually gold, right? And I remember years ago we're like talking about like crazy techniques that you can do in kendo, but like joking techniques, right? So one of them will be like when you're in Suba Serie, like stomping somebody's foot. So when you go like, oh my god, my foot, you can get a hickey like like just silly stuff like that. And then like for some reason, one crazy technique was like when you're in Suba Serie, like spitting at somebody's face through the man, right? And when they go to like clean it up, you can get a hickey. And funny thing, that you're talking about self-awareness, that actually happened to me. So I was at a dojo at here where we live in Miami, right? And one of the new students, he he had that like competitive edge that he wanted to just be better, and he was giving 200% every time that he was fighting, right? Especially fighting me, because I get really competitive as well, right? But obviously he's too new. He didn't really know like the motions and didn't really know how to like get around my sword, and he will get frustrated a lot of times. And especially this practice, we were doing like Shiai practice, so Sensei wanted me to be extra special with him that day, right? And he got so like into it that when he ki'd, like spit came out of his mouth and it went into my face. And then like when I try cleaning it up, obviously you can't clean it up because you have the man on your face. So I literally spent like 10 seconds trying to get my hand through the man. And by that time, he just got hickey man and he got ippon, right? And then the funny thing was like, senseis and everybody was like, yeah, ippon. It's like, I have spit on my face. It's like, but never put your guard down, right? That was my fault. I got hit because I let my guard down. But yeah, those type of things. Kind of, you get a lot of funny stories with that, with kendo. I think most of my funny stories when it comes to kendo, they are kind of like outside of the kendo practice itself. We go a lot like because we're so friendly, right? Like we're always doing stuff after the dojo and stuff, and it's always good. And oh, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna share this story. You tell me if it's too much. You stop me if it's like I don't think I shared
Warnings
this.
at the start, like what kind of content are we like going to hear about, and like does it go against
Okay, there were.
like how bad? I've heard some pretty bad stuff, to be fair.
No. I wouldn't share those stories online. I'll share those in person. But like it's I think it's PG-13, right? Like it's just like a little bit graphic. Okay.
We all good then.
All right. So I'm not gonna mention. I'm gonna say it was in Japan. I was in a practice in Japan. I got invited to a very special practice in Japan. Let's just put it like that. I'm not gonna say where. I don't want to point fingers. But we do the practice, and obviously everybody in the dojo was nanadan and above, right? So obviously it's kind of like one of those like you shut up and you do what you're told, right? Especially if you want to be invited again. Now, like a lot of in a lot of practices in Japan, a lot of people like like the hot water thing, like the onsen and stuff like that. So at this dojo, they had like a it's like a jacuzzi type of thing there for everybody to to enjoy after practice. So obviously I enjoy myself as well, right? But I really didn't know the etiquette, like how the whole thing is. I mean, I did know. Hold on, I did know the etiquette. I just didn't know what would happen or how the experience was, right? So the experience is that you shower and then you go into this tub, right? Like you enjoy it, and that's pretty straightforward. Everybody's clean. You enjoy it there. Um, how to say this? So I take my shower, and then I ask if I can, enjoy the tub. And the census is like, oh, like you. He was surprised because not that many, I guess, people enjoy like because that water is like really hot, right? So he was surprised. So it's like, okay, cool. So yeah, you can go in, and like when if you go in, you cannot like say no like 2 seconds after you went in, right? Like it's kind of you have to just like even if you don't like it, you have to like. So I did enjoy it a lot, right? But what happens is, I'm sure that you're aware that a lot of people in Japan don't shave, you know, and a lot of content comes loose and floats around. And the thing is like you don't shower after, right? You shower before. So I kind of realized that when I was like too deep into the thing. So while I was there, like every time, like they were asking me stuff, like they'll tell me like, oh, where are you from? I was like, I'm from Venezuela. Like, North America is here, like South America is here, like just making these motions a lot. So the water wouldn't come to me. But yeah, so a lot of funny stories like that, I guess. It wasn't that bad, right? Like it's just a little bit graphic, I guess, but I just want to make sure I stay within the guidelines of your channel.
Bad. Very gross. Very.
It is.
Unpleasant.
It was very gross, especially to the fact that like if I shower after, it would have been kind of like, what the fuck are you doing, right? Like people would have been like, well, why are you showering after? You showered before. So
you could pull the gaijin card and like, oh no, we showered before and after.
I guess I could have. But at that point, I was just like, let me just go home and just like take care of that situation at home, because yeah, I think I did a pretty good job at the whole like, talking with my hands type of thing, right? That helped a lot. But
Oh my god, that would. Oh god. Just
No,
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 that that that, that wasn't that wasn't. It's something to take notice if you go to Japan and just take your shower and go. Like just meet them out for dinner after and have fun after. You know. Um, but it's interesting. I think going to Japan as a as what you say gaijin, right? Like, uh, but someone that does kendo, I think you get treated so much better, right? The Japanese people will treat you nice just because you're not from Japan, right? But they'll treat you extra nice when you do kendo and you actually you're respectful and you understand because practicing one of the things. And it's funny because I talked about this a lot with a lot of my friends that live there or practice there or still living there, right? That a lot of times it kind of becomes annoying to practice with foreigners, and I'm a foreigner too, right? Again, like instead of people from Japan. And I feel that, and you know what, like I didn't really understand what they meant by telling me that. But then when I was there, a lot of the times when people will come visit, I feel like a lot of times when they walk in to practice, they feel like they have something to prove rather than just work in their own self. And that kind of becomes a little bit of like, I'm not gonna say annoying, but I'm gonna say like it kind of becomes boring because you don't get the same experience when you go there as in like let's get better together, right? Like because it's kind of like if you want to fight like Shiai style, right? We can do that all day. But if you're going to try to at all cost avoid getting hit just because you don't feel like you should get hit, that becomes a little thing. I think a little bit of hindrance during the practice, and that's one of the things that I feel that was one of the hardest things for me to learn as a beginner. And I kind of got reminded a lot of it when I was in Japan that it's okay to get hit. Like you're practicing, you're trying to get better, and if you don't allow yourself to get hit, not only you're ruining your partner's technique, but also you don't realize what your weaknesses really are, and you can make them better. So yeah, I like to get hit a lot outside of tournament, right? But
yeah. I will say inside Chi, I hate the head dodgers, and then the people who take the head dodging into normal practice.
mm.
It's like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and
it's
and
so
that's the thing.
annoying.
Like, well, in Shia, I can understand it, right? Because like in Shia, you come out with your ugliest kendo, and as long as you get the ippon, you're fine. But in practice, it's like, okay, like, what are we doing here? I mean, yeah, it's interesting just to see like the personality that, and you can see a lot from people's personality when they practice. But I think that's one of the best things that you need to learn is like allow yourself to get hit and be okay with it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But also, if somebody's hitting and you can smell iron, they're hitting too hard. Don't take that, please. Like,
Wait, you can smell iron?
I think
What
that's
do you mean?
the correct. Like, I there's one sensei when I was doing my coaching course who was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm great at taking hits," but so I then told somebody who was a doctor that I could smell this smell, and he was like, it's a sign of brain damage."
Oh yeah. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. Okay. As much as you need to learn how to get hit, the person needs to learn how to hit because
Yeah,
one of the biggest things is like you don't want to harm your partner, right? And that's one of the things that I stressed a lot with the people when I'm sharing my knowledge is that you're not trying to hit someone as if you're trying a bat against somebody's head, right? Like if you were to have a sword, you need to have force and you need to be able to sustain the force through the cut, but the sword, the edge is the one that's going to do the work of cutting through. You don't need to drive. And anybody that's done cutting, can attest to this, that you use the tenouchi to put strength into and to support the blade to stay straight, but you don't need to keep pushing once you already make contact, right? And that's one of the things that I feel a lot of beginners do. They want to hit harder and they just drive and they drive down and they just like bring you down. It's like that's actually really 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 bad, especially when people get hit on the cote. Like when you open the cote for the person and they come down with like all their might and put extra weight on it. That's it's not beneficial. Yeah. Those people need to learn how to hit better. Yes.
Yeah. But I still want to go back to the dojo, even if I'm gonna get beaten up with.
Listen,
Listen,
I know like a lot of people are are still not at the dojo. I'm lucky enough that about 2 weeks ago I started back at the dojo. We haven't put on full bogu yet. Um Especially because I want to make sure that everybody, it's safe and they don't pass out as they practice. But ideally I know like it's you want to practice hitting somebody and do stuff like that. I know I'm very lucky in the sense that I kind of started walking that path. uh but I think if we keep like studying, let me just put it this way: I found a little bit of sanity watching videos, studying, breaking them down, and actually practicing on my own. Like I didn't have a spot to like practice footwork, for example, until like very recently, like probably about 2 months ago. But that makes such a big difference. Even having a hallway just to do just footwork and suburi, it just makes a big difference.
I completely
And
agree.
and making a little shinai. This has been my best friend for this past year. Like this been the best thing I could have wished for this year.
All I will say is this: my ceilings are so low.
Mm,
You know these special heavy mini shinais.
yeah.
yeah.
That's it
Oh
touching the
wow.
ceiling. That is it touching the ceiling. For people who
Oh
can't
wow.
see
Wait,
me, I am
wait.
sitting down on my chair and being able to touch the shinai to the ceiling.
No, I can do it with a regular shinai, but not with my little shinai.
Yeah, that's how
Well,
bad it
like,
is. I
damn,
have
that
to use a kodachi if I want to actually not smash the ceiling.
and that's one of the things that even before the pandemic hit, I was practicing where I used to live. I could swing a boken, right, on indoors, but I didn't realize that because of the ceiling, I was compensated by like bending my arm a little bit and then ending up with a swing like this. That then later on, I realized that I brought into the dojo. And one thing that, regardless of what you're doing, you got to make sure that when you do your swing, you can have a free range of motion. Because even though I knew that that was a bad habit, I didn't realize I picked it up until I had to work on getting rid of it again.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important to make sure that you have a good motion. So for you, I don't know if you've seen the video that Kunitomo share of his training at home from the All Japan Federation. Uh, that he does pretty much everything on Zeza.
Yeah, no, I definitely do it in Seiza as well, but like when I'm practicing footwork, if I want to clear the
Yeah.
ceiling, have to
Oh
do
Oh
yeah,
this.
yeah,
no,
no,
yeah,
that
you have to
have to
take
No,
that
take it
outside
outside.
and look crazy in front of people. That's
there's snow outside at the moment.
oh yeah. So about that I get shorter. I don't know.
Go through the coldness with pain. It's all good. Yeah, no, if you,
I
yeah,
mean, yeah, no. It becomes you gotta make sure that you're. I think that when you practice in suburi, it's okay if you're doing it for like training purposes in the sense of like you want to work through your mental status or whatever. Like that's okay. But when you're practicing basics, you need to make sure that you do it and you focus on that. You cannot have distraction. For example, like I could go work out, I can go run with music and so on, but as soon as I do suburi, I turn everything off. Like I want to make sure that I'm focusing on exactly what I'm doing and I'm polishing. That's the way the word I use the most. I'm trying to polish rather than I'm not doing suburi just because I need the repetition for exercise. It's not that. I'm not. It's not a workout. I think it's a study. I always like to say that. So much that when you see in every dojo that you go to, you're gonna see people they do warm ups and then they do suburi. So it's not that they do suburi for warm ups. No, it's warm up and then you do suburi. And in the case like for me, one of the best practices that I had while I was in Japan the practice was that like you do 10 minutes of warm-ups, like whether it was like a little bit of running or stretching, whatever. Then you do suburi, and then you do footwork, right? So you do that as a study, then you go regular practice. So that's one of the things that I always try to drive through whenever I'm working with people, is that suburi is not a warm-up. You
You
can
can
Mhm.
warm
warm
up
up.
with suburi as well. That's fine. But when you do suburi, you need to focus on it.
I completely agree. But then you still get the little subsection. It's like, well, it's just Saburi. I don't need to put all of my energy into it. It's fine. I can just uh uh, and they don't
and
treat
And
it properly. And you can tell them you need to do this, but then it doesn't always click until it clicks, and you can't make it
it
click before it clicks.
well, listen, suburi. Let's be honest here. Let's keep it a buck here. Suburi is boring. Suburi, it's tedious, right? And suburi, it's hard for somebody that hasn't really done it for a while to see the benefit of how suburi translates to kendo. Because I can tell you, I have friends that they're better at kendo than me. They're like they're very competitive. They well, I'm very competitive, but like what I'm saying is like they're Golden and Rokudan. I have Golden and Rokudan friends that tell me they don't like to do suburi, right? And I don't think anybody likes to do suburi, but I like what I can get out of doing proper suburi. Because if I wanted to do suburi for endurance, for that I'll do kakarigeko, right? If I wanted to do suburi for speed, for that I do uchikomi, or I do like there's so many better dresses for that. If I want to get better physical condition, I'm like, well, don't do suburi. You just go to the gym, right? Go running or do whatever. Like there's so much, but suburi has its purpose. So I know it's boring, and as a matter of fact, like I think if you notice, like, and this is like a theory of mine, whatever, that when you're at the dojo, you do very little suburi, right? You do a little bit of suburi, kind of to like fine tune before you go to practice, and then you do practice. But I think suburi should be done at home most, right? Like that should be kind of like your review of your class during the non-practice time, in order to create that muscle memory and like that they good habits. Because um, you can see it a lot when people look at suburi and they think, okay, well, you have to do fumikomi at the strike, but when you do suburi, the left leg comes in with the strike, right? Why does that happen? Why is it backwards? And the truth is that it's not, because when you do suburi, you do fumikomi, but immediately that you do fumikomi, the left foot should be there, right? And that's what you're looking for when you're doing suburi slower. You're looking to have your left foot at the moment of strike, so you can keep going forward with suriashi, or to follow through. And I think there's a lot of details that you can learn and bring into your actual kendo by doing suburi. And I don't think you need to do a lot of suburi. I think every amount of suburi will have a specific goal, a specific result. So yeah, you should just think about it like that way. Just look at about it that way, I
I
think.
think.
Yeah, I completely agree. But again, sadly, not everyone can practice at home, which is the sad part. Because especially at like a university club,
Mm.
Mm.
ceilings are low, cramped spaces, and yeah. But I wish everyone would actually like at least try to practice at home. It'd be nice.
And it's when I was in college, I talked a lot to different athletes, because I had friends like on the swimming team, and like I asked him like, so how is your practice? Like what's your routine, right? And they will tell me like, well, if you want to be competitive, you got to treat it like a job. You got to do between, is it going to be a part-time job or is it going to be a full-time job, right? So if it's a full-time job, you got to do 40 hours a week. If it's a part-time job, you have to do 16 to 20 hours a week. But what does that mean? Does that mean that you have to be like killing yourself for 16, 20, 40 hours a week? And it's like, no, you have your time where you got to dedicate to your study, which that counts towards your 40 hours, right? Like you're reading, you're watching videos, you're watching your own videos, you're studying. You also got to think about the times where you got to do your exercises. If you need to do the gym, if you need to do running, if you need to do suburi, that's another count. You also got to count your practice times whenever you go to practice. Okay, well, those are the easy hours, right? Because it's scheduling and whatever. And then you also have to schedule your relaxation, because we tend to forget that. Tend to forget that we need to be well rested to take on the next practice. So I think seeing it that way kind of helped me understand how to like balance my time and be more motivated to do the boring stuff, right? Because
Yes.
it's I know it's boring, I know it's tedious, but you get so much more out of just taking a little sacrifice of time, I guess.
I agree, but I also always like to say quote unquote boring because I do know some insane people who are like, no, this is the interesting stuff. I'm like, nice.
Mm. Everybody has their preference. Like there's people that don't like to compete. For example, they love doing kendo, but they don't like to compete. And everybody. And that's the beautiful thing about kendo. You can do kendo however you like. I think at some point we all get enjoyment to practice with each other and seeing the difference, because those people who don't like to compete, for example, they have no problem on getting hit, and they will probably like be so happy when you get a good hit on them, so you get good feedback for yourself and you learn a lot from that style. So everybody can do kendo however they want. As a matter of fact, you know what, I think I told you about it. I want to be interested on how people can enjoy kendo even though they don't do kendo, right? uh, because I know in Japan, for example, I know people that they don't do kendo. Maybe they did it for a little bit when they were little, whatever, or they've never done it, but they enjoy watching the matches for the competitions, right? They go to the competitions and enjoy the. So that those are the type of things that I kind of want to just explore more, just to see how people can get interest, either when they don't do kendo or doing through the boring stuff.
I will say, like, being in a large dojo during Jigeiko time is an experience, especially if you don't do kendo. It's just like, it is hard to describe, but obviously when
Yeah.
you're doing kendo, really fun.
Oh, my camera battery died. Let me change it real quick. So sorry.
No worries, no worries. We still have
2 seconds.
audio.
Yeah, it should be okay. There you go. There you go. There you go. I had that. I had to prepare. I had a feeling that this battery wasn't gonna make it the whole time, but um. So yeah, I mean, like ideally, you want to. It's it's an experience to seeing like a whole practice with a bunch of people, and you don't know anything about kendo. For example, I have an uncle that he drove me to a seminar in Tampa, which is like 4 hours away from where I live. And I was expecting for him to say, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go for coffee or whatever while you're in practice." But no, like he stayed there and he actually enjoyed it. And then after that, he was like asking me questions and being engaged about it. So I was like, "This is crazy." Like you have no idea what kendo is. You obviously don't have any interest in doing it, but you can still be interested on what it is and just watching it. And I don't know. And I think like kendo is not that exciting when it comes to like a full match, because there's a lot of tension, right? Like you can have somebody get bored that doesn't understand kendo get bored watching a match. Yeah, exactly. But then at the moment of ippon, they're like, "Oh my god, I wish I was awake. I wish I was watching the whole thing." And then that gets them interested on watching more, I guess. I don't know. I
I
still need to
agree.
figure that one out.
Because I remember I have a friend who does jujitsu and he was watching some kendo videos. I can't remember why, but like he was watching it and I was like, yeah, I don't understand how this happens. Like it was a Suriagi men, but it was a very
Mm-hmm.
small one. And he was like, yeah, but why was the red guy getting the point when it was the white guy who got hit? When it was the red guy who got hit, and it's like, no, slow it down to like 1 frame per second and look, this
Yeah.
is a Suriagi men, and it's like, no way. How did you
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
see that? And I'd watched it like 5 times and like, yeah, Kendo's fun.
Yeah, it is, and that's one of the things I remember actually having that conversation with friends back when I was like EQ, and saying like, oh my god, how the referees see that, right? Like how they see it. And then as I got, higher up the ladder, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I understand what's happening. I understand seeing it, and I can pick some of the motion. Actually, somebody sent me a video the other day, which I'm gonna do a video for my YouTube, and they said, who would you give the ippon, right? Because it was actually one of the matches from the last World Championship, Korea, Japan. And I was there, and I remember at that championship, I didn't have too much doubt on the chimpan's decisions. On the one before and the one in Tokyo, I had more doubts. I had more like, that could have gone more for that other side than this one, whatever. But in the last one, I didn't have that feeling that much. So I was like, okay, let me watch this point, right? And then I watched it, and I was like, okay, it did look like he went for Korea, not Japan, right? But then I was like, let me watch it one more time, and then I noticed that the shinai for the Korean player, he went out to the side, right? And it didn't make contact. But obviously, when you're good with your fumikomi and stuff like that, you actually can get a good sound and it make it look like it was a point. And I was like, when I was watching, it's like I don't remember having discrepancy with this decision when I was there, right? But then I watching it again, and it makes such a difference watching it while you're there and being able to see it from a different angle than just like a 2D vision of it. So even then, like like the chimpanzees can make mistake as well, and it happens. But you also want to make sure that you understand that they probably have more experience than you do. So I always like to say, like, don't question the chimpanzee, right? Like, just is their decision. They'll feel guilty. They'll feel real guilty if they made a mistake. So
Don't
I'll
question
trust them.
Japan even if you get like it's really annoying, but like don't question Japan even if you get hit off the logo and you know it. Maybe just ask
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
afterwards
yeah.
politely, because you know, like you don't want to be that person in a shy who's just like, even though you're like, look, they didn't hit me. It still comes off as like that, which
Yeah,
is so
yeah.
annoying because it should be like, hey, huh? Obviously, if you're in a team,
Mm.
the not the coach, the
Yeah, the manager. Yeah, you have like a
manager, yeah,
manager that
can
can.
like
Yeah,
go,
even
hey,
even
like tap
for
them.
even for individuals, I think you can have that. I'm sure. I don't really remember, but what happens is that, like, I've been chimpan myself, right? And whenever I make a mistake, I know I made a mistake, right? And I'll feel real guilty about that mistake for a while. So that's what I'm saying. Like, listen, even if you question the chimpan, first you're not gonna get your ippon after they made that decision, right? Because the decision is going to pretty much be final. But that chimpan will feel bad for a long time because of that little mistake. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure.
That's kind of
Uh,
good to know. It's like there, you know, when you're in a shy and there's just like there's definitely like one chimpan where you're just like, do they actually like care if they like that they got this wrong, or they're just like, I saw it how I saw it. I'm like,
like,
obviously when you're like really low and you're like a beginner and you're like, and the shy
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
everything to you and you're like, you know.
So I think that, like, either a chimpan whether when a chimpan is not experienced, when they're like, a lot of like insecurities, they're probably looking at who the highest rank on the chimpanzee is with him and try to kind of like, mimic a little bit of what the decision might be. If there's hesitation, was there a point or not? They will say, okay, well, that chimpan did it. So I think those type of chimpans, they'll probably not feel guilty about making a mistake because they're probably like trying to, like, you know. But I think good chimpans, they don't. I don't think any chimpan. First of all, I don't think any chimpan wants to give a point to one person specifically, right? Like, I think all of us in kendo, we are mature enough, and we're good people enough where we go in when saying like, okay, let's see this match, let's see who gets really the point. I know there might be the exception of the rule, but I have faith. I have faith. But when someone makes a mistake as a chimpan, I think they will be like, I should have given that point. I actually seen chimpans apologize to competitors, right? Like one chimpan say like, listen, the other two chimpans saw it from the other side. I saw it from this angle, and I gave this decision, but I should have given. I've seen that happen as well, and I think it's okay because at the end of the day, I mean, you're getting what? Why are you competing for? You're competing because you want to win, obviously, but you're also competing because you want to get better, right? And one way to for me to like rationalize uh the whole thing about like, oh, they got a point on me, I was like, well, don't get hit, like just keep that sword away from you. That's easy, like, I'm just kidding, obviously, but ideally you want to make sure that you try to give your best performance, you're trying to learn from the experience, and you're also trying to see how you can be better, and hopefully also the shimpas are getting better. So
And also always remember there's going to be a next Shiai, especially after
mm.
quarantine. There's going to be so many.
Oh my god, I can't wait. I really can't wait. I've been like, a lot of my friends are posting pictures from like, 2019, like all she eyes, and I'm like looking, I'm like, wait, is that now? Is that happening now? Like, where's this? So it makes it like a lot more like, oh, I want to go back, I want to go back, and that's, even though I know I'm not where I was competitive wise back then, I definitely want to just jump into it. It's like, screw it, just even with the mask, I don't care. Let's do it.
I can't wait. But yeah. So how many like ballpark? How many Shiais have you been to?
Oof, I couldn't tell you, because I'm gonna tell you, there was one year where I attended 13 shiais in one year, and I remember that just because like it was like one, like pretty much every month, right? Like, and I had two in a month. And I remember that because that was before I went to the Tokyo World Championships, and I remember specifically that number because the coach, when we were training, and said like, oh, how many? He asked me how many shiais you were doing. And it's like, I counted. I was like, oh well, I did more than once a month, which in a way was kind of crazy, and that's where the addiction kind of kicks in, right? Because there's no shiais within like 4 hour drive from where I live, so I always had to be on a plane. It was, I traveled, needless to say, I got a lot of miles on my Delta account, because I did travel a lot that year. But I'm gonna say that I started competing when I was EQ. I think my first competition was when I got my EQ, and I haven't stopped. Every time that I get a chance, I try to go and compete. I just think it's good times. I never go, in with the feeling of I need to just not get hit, not get touched or whatever. I always go with the spirit of like, I want to learn something new. I want to see what people are working on, and most of all, I want to see if what I'm doing works. Right, what I've been practicing, does that work? And I think when you go with that in mind, you're probably gonna have better results. I remember on my second shy that I went, I was like, oh, I want to get out of my like first bracket, right? Like I want to just make it out of my first bracket. And I think I didn't make it out of my first bracket on that tournament. And I was like, okay, that's probably not the best approach. And then, through self awareness, I started realizing, okay, well, it's not necessarily, you don't have to go with the I need to win mentality. You need to go into more, what do I need to do to win mentality. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I tend to go with the mentality of what do I need to do to not lose, and if that makes any sense, it's like not to win at any cost, but not to make my kendo look bad and therefore lose even if I've won.
Okay. Okay. So why do you do that?
Because I don't like I do like competition, but I also hate competition because it's irritating and ah. But I like challenging myself and I like
Yeah.
seeing what I can do, and I would rather uh actually win any competition. I'd rather lose a good match than win a bad one.
Mm-mm.
because I don't want what I used to do when I was like Shodan and below is like even like a bit more after I passed Shodan, like I'd really mirror other people's kendo when I was fighting them. So like if they got defensive and blocky, I'd get defensive and blocky, and just all that stuff. And like if they got annoyed, I got annoyed, and that is something that I really really hated. I was like, oh my god, why am I doing this? So after like I still do it sometimes, and it's really irritating, but like just have to kind of clear your mind and focus on actually doing good kendo instead of winning. So in my mind, it's like I'm not going to lose what I've been taught. I'm going to yeah.
So it's interesting because that's kind of similar to what goes through my mind as I go. When I go into a Shiai, well, first of all, and this is a thing that I got. I mentioned that I work in the addiction treatment. I work in the psychology field, right? So I am very interested in sports psychology, not only for the sports side of my life, but also because I think it applies a lot to our daily life. So one of the best things that I've gotten so far from that field is to mimic your practice as if it was your Shiai and make your Shiai as if it was your practice, right? So I always try to make sure that I keep the same mentality, whether I am in practice or if I am in Shiai. So whichever it is, I'm always focusing on do my kendo. Don't allow my opponent to change my kendo, right? And that's kind of a little bit of one of the things that you kind of mentioned, right? You want to make sure that you do your best what you've been taught. And there's been times and there are times where you are going to change it because of what your opponent is doing. But I always try to always remind myself, I go in my head, like do your kendo, right? Like, and when I say the things that I need to do to win, it's like I need to make sure that I'm relaxed and I need to make sure that I don't overreact to things, right? I need to make sure that I go forward instead of going back. When I see myself like being too defensive, going back, I know that going back is a bad thing, but you have to know how to do it, right? But regardless, you want to have that forward mentality always putting that pressure forward. And then also pay attention to what your opponent is doing, right? Like don't just like forget that you have someone with a sword in front of you and then just not do anything. You want to make sure that you're pushing forward, you're trying to stay focused, and you're always reading what the reaction to your opponent is. That's what I do in practice and in Shiai. So
and then circling back to like what you were talking about with people traveling to Japan, that would also help them and not get the people around them annoyed if they treated it more like Shiai in that way because they're just practicing to improve.
Yes. And you know, even though like my difference between doing Keiko, regular Keiko and Shiai, which you know it's night and day, it's that in Keiko I am paying more attention to me, right? Like I am paying more attention to every little movement I'm doing, where when I'm in Shiai, I don't care, right? I allow my body to do whatever it needs to be doing. So like I'm using, if we're gonna like make a computing analogy, I'm using my computing power more towards what I need to do to get that ippon rather than looking at myself. So, and I think that attitude, even if I were to do it, you know, in a practice in Keiko, right? Like it's not going to come as in I'm being arrogant, right? I'm trying to always make it also a good experience for my partner. Obviously, there's going to be a difference defending. You know, like I'm also going to use more computing power to just make sure that I don't get hit. Yeah, but ideally, I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to both myself and my partner when I'm doing Keiko and putting more attention on what I need to do for the Shiai.
So if we can focus a bit more on Shiai, because like this is something that a lot of beginners have a big issue with, especially like in the UK, not many people start from a young age. It's like a very small amount, and it's mainly people start at university. So you obviously get massive amounts of age difference because some people start in Scotland, some people start at 16. some people start at like 21. And it's like, so you can get massive.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a gap.
And it can there are definitely some people who internalize that as they're older, therefore they're better, and then the older people are like they're younger, therefore they're worse, and really do not take, even in a Shiai setting or even a training setting, people who they view as being worse being better than them. And this also does have a bit to do with sexism, sadly, in Kendo. And also racism, but that's only in some places, and obviously I haven't experienced it myself, but I have friends who have, and I'm not disregarding their feelings. I would punch someone in the face if they did. Angry. Yeah. And then when you get to a Shiai, those feelings definitely compound. So how have you got any tips for people who are like, I view everyone as weaker, and also have you got any tips for people who view everyone as stronger than them? Because those are definitely two ends of the spectrum that I see people at.
Yes. Okay, so that's a very, very good question. Very interesting. So people who think that they are weaker, the first thing that you need to realize is that all you need is one ippon to win a match, right? So, and anybody, like, you can fall with your sword on top of their man and you probably get lucky and get an ippon, right? Like, so that being said, you have to have confidence on what you need to do. So that, if you're, okay, the tip that I'm going to give you cannot be used right before going to the match. It has to start at your dojo. You have to train yourself to get that confidence. And I need to make sure that I'm secure to what I'm doing, find what works for me to get an ippon. And if you know that you can get one ippon in practice, you got to make sure that you take that into Shiai. All you need is one ippon, right? Learn yourself, learn what works for you, what technique is best for you, and then learn your habits, how to not put yourself in a bad position where you're going to get scored on. I think that's number one. They're just building up that confidence, understanding that you're not weaker, that you're capable of getting an ippon. So you have to remind yourself that every practice, and to remind yourself during Shiai and before Shiai. For the people that think they're always better, it's healthy to go into a competition knowing that you have the confidence, but make sure that that confidence is also well founded, because you got to understand that everybody is going to have a different habits and different things to do, and you don't know if that happens to match with your weakness. And I think that arrogance can blind you into what weaknesses you may have based on the kendo of the other person. Again, anybody can get an ippon, and if you just go blindly thinking that you're going to be better, and I've seen it a lot with people that are bigger. They tend to bully the smaller person, like pushing them around, and like, oh, because I'm stronger, I can cut through your sword, and like, and stuff like that. But that's not necessarily the kendo that's going to always get you an ippon or even pass you through testing, right? So in that sense, it goes to the point, like, why are you doing kendo, and how are you doing your kendo? What's the goal that you have with your kendo? Because if you're going to think, okay, I am the best one in the world, I can assure you there's always someone better than you. And if you want to find out who's the one that's going to beat you up, you can call me up. I can find you the person that will match up to your needs to be beating up, because there's always someone better than you, right? There's always someone bigger, there's always someone stronger, there's always someone faster. And listen, I think going to Japan, you couldn't get any humbler experience than being a huge dude and getting your like butt whooped by a 80-year-old sensei, right? Like it's an experience.
Maybe it would hurt them more if they got beat up by a high schooler, which is very possible. Like, high schoolers in Japan, they are quick.
They're quick. They're quick. But what happens with that? Okay, I'm going to say that, like, for me, a humbler, like, I couldn't be any more like humble down. I was in one practice in Osaka, and I remember it was an open practice, and I fought someone that was probably half my height, And I wasn't trying to be rude or anything. We did I-men, right? We both came in for men, and then we went to Suba City I, and I was coming with momentum. He was pretty much standing still, and by the time that we did Suba City I bounced back, right? Not him. I bounced back, and just to have someone so much shorter than me having such well balanced and be able to, like, for lack of a better word, manhandle me like that. That was, and like, okay, it's not about being bigger. It's not about the one that's being, the one that hits harder. Because again, senseis hit you, they have a nice sound, but they don't hurt because they don't want it to hurt. If they need to, like, sit you down and say, like, hey, listen, I'm going to show you why what you're doing hurts, they will show you why what you're doing hurts and why is it wrong and why, like, it's a mistake. I know I actually train with people that they think that being the bigger person is going to give them the most benefit, and it's not. It's but that's something that I guess you can only get through experience. Whenever you go into a competition thinking that you are better than the person, I think your biggest weakness is going to be not realizing where your opening is, because that person, even if they don't feel weaker, or even if they feel weaker, they're going to try to exploit whatever opening they can get from you. And realizing that, okay, everybody deserves respect, I think is number one thing in approaching a shia. Hope it makes sense.
No, I think that makes sense. I like that. I'm going to definitely clip this and send it to people. Well, no, I'm not going to send it to people who think are arrogant. No, that's a bad idea. To be fair, there's not that many, but like usually people who are like that do drop out. So it'd be fine.
All their change.
Yeah, they drop out or they change. Because I don't think I've seen anyone past Shodan who has that kind of I'm bigger so I'm better mentality.
I've seen them. They're there. Don't worry, you will find them at some point. You'll find one of them. It's just it's annoying. I'm not gonna lie. Actually, I had someone that I think when I was Nidan or Sandan headbutted me, right? Like come with it. And I remember getting upset, not because of the headbutt, but because it was a brand new man that I had on. And I was like, dude, no, you didn't. And I remember it's like, okay, you wanna come with that attitude. Now obviously there are techniques that you can do to make sure that they know that what they're doing is not right? So like I remember he headbutted me once, and then he tried to headbutt me one more time, but I was ready for it, so I kind of went to the side and used it like a yokomen. But I may or may have not intentionally hit it a little bit lower than where it should. No, I never hit on the back. That's bad. But it's I may or may have not hit it like around the ear side, and that kind of gets that's that ringing, like I call it, like the phone call, because I'm ringing their phone call. So then after that, like he's like, okay, let me be cautious with this dude, because like he can hurt me, right? Like I'm not trying to hurt you, but I'm trying to let you know that I'm not gonna let you hurt me, right? And I had it with people, like they get overly sensitive and they try to come and hit you in a way where, like, it's not right? Like I remember being in a practice. It wasn't even a shia, in a practice where this dude just started coming at me, like hitting me on my shoulders, like hitting me on my sides and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to make sure that I control the situation, right? So like controlling the sword kind of becomes more important, because again, when people get like that, they tend to forget that they're easier to control, in the sense of like kind of like a bull, like the matador, right? Like you can, like, you can dance them around per se, and all that's going to do for them is that they're going to spend that extra energy, and then they're going to be tired, and then they're going to be able to respond accordingly to somebody coming in for a waza. And that's one of the biggest things, that that's why you have to let your ego aside, because when you have that ego protecting you so much, once you get hit, that ego tries to overprotect you by just making you angrier and making you like waste more energy, and that's just not beneficial for you because it just becomes a cycle.
Just to clarify, I wasn't saying that you should hit on the back of the head, but depending on how somebody headbutts, if they do that, it can be really easy to do it because they're basically dipping down. Were they headbutting and was it like Subasari headbutt or like I'm trying to think of the situation?
Okay, so you know what, like what I like to do with Subasai is like I want to replicate my Kamai in Subasai. So the way that he was in, instead of like having Kamai, he was kind of like coming in close like this, right? So like he had his arms. He probably didn't have his arms like he probably had them like this, and then he was like so close here, and then he just went like this, right? Like he went to this like he couldn't do it forward front to front because I always keep the distance. So he kind of went to the side, and then he like he headbutted me like from that distance. I understand if you're coming from far, you do a CDI and out of momentum you headbutt, but no, this dude was like close in already, and then he just headbutted, and that's kind of like a sign like, oh, now I'm being arrogant, right? Like so that's don't do that, kids. Don't do that.
Yeah, no, that is just not okay. But like, yeah, no, I there are so many people who like in Shigeko, you're just like, yeah, this is good, but then they get increasingly more annoyed, and they're just like, no, you can't do this, and then there's, yeah, it's hard to explain, but like, you know, when you're older and you're slower, and then you train with somebody who's younger and quicker, and you don't know how to control the situation, and the older person can get annoyed and then take it out, and they don't, yeah.
So, but that comes from inexperience from the older person in the sense of, and that inexperience turning to arrogance will stop you from learning what you need to do. Because again, I've been in a Jigeko practice with somebody that's like 80 years old, and to the untrained eye, they may look like they're faster than me because they're always getting me rather than me. But in reality, it's a timing thing, right? It's a timing and also self-awareness of their own distance. I remember like there was this sensei that I trained with when I was in Osaka, that it's it's interesting to see that like even his hands, like his hands didn't look like normal hands. Like he had arthritis in his hands, so he had like a lot of like deformities in his hands. But once he put the hands in the shinai, it's like they were made for it, right? And I remember it took me about 3 weeks, obviously because of my language barrier, right? Like to realize what he was trying to do with me, the practice that he was trying to do with me, because every time I was coming for men, he was there already. Like I could have been coming for men, and he was already boop, boop, always, always. So obviously the first couple of practices, I was like, oh my god, what's going on? Why can I get him? Why can I not even come close? And then the problem, then just if I would have let my arrogance kind of like get in the way, I would have never learned the lesson. He would always been better than me, right? And I mean, he's still better than me regardless. But I was able to learn. Okay, you know what? I am coming in, but I'm initiating my attack too early from too far away. I need to come in closer. I need to have the confidence to come in and close the distance and just perform a technique where it's going to be compact, it's going to be closer, it's going to be sharp, it's going to be strong. And I'm going to tell you, like after 3 weeks of training at that dojo, after 3 weeks, he gave me a big hug and he's like, okay, you finally got it. I was like, oh my God, I finally got it. So it's like, it's arrogance will take away from your learning experience. It's if you're going to do kendo because you want to be better than everybody, like you better get into something that has a leaderboard and you can keep track of that, because kendo is not about that.
I think games are good for that. They have leaderboards.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Like there's probably like a lot of like samurai games and stuff like that. You can try that too, right? But in kendo is not about that. Kendo is about you are your biggest enemy, you're your biggest opponent, you're your biggest obstacle. So learning yourself and learning to work through your weaknesses to improve your kendo. That's key. That's a secret.
Like the people who are arrogant are the least. You don't when you're training with them, you don't want to engage with them. So the person who is arrogant and just like in a normal dojo, you don't get the best out of your practice because people don't want to train with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sad kind of truth of it. But like,
Mm-hmm.
and then they don't want to tell you why they don't want to train with you. And it's just like a horrific cycle of like you'll never really improve because nobody's going to tell you that you're being a bit of not nice person, and then they're not going to train properly and just like, oh, it's fine, he gets annoyed when I hit him a lot, so I'm just going to let him hit me, and then it's a cycle that's bad for both people. So like, well, like I understand the feeling of like I don't want to train properly with this guy, but like how do you train properly without ensuing the irritation of the person?
So that's a very interesting topic you bring up. That's actually very real, right? Um, I'm going to say this: when you are the person training with somebody that you don't want to train with, that should be your practice to get better, right? Because that's when you should. I would even say, like, you can allow the person to hit you as much as they want. Use that moment to learn. And if it's hurting and stuff like that, well, then obviously you have to adapt. You have to do different things. Like, I always tell people when I practice, you don't want to hit too hard because then people's going to start lifting their heads. And what's the problem with people lifting their heads is that your shinai is going to break quicker because you're going to be hitting mengane. You're going to be spending more money on shinai. So if you want to have shinais that last longer, well, don't hit harder than you need to and hit properly. You don't need to. Anyways, regardless, that's a whole other topic. But when you don't have that attitude of arrogance, well, you're right. People will want to train with you more. And I couldn't tell you I had a better experience than when I was in Japan because one thing is like I'm hungry to learn. And whenever you go to a dojo and listen, I met so many people. And this is if you want to go to Japan, and I can give you an advice to have a good time in Japan. One thing is leave the arrogance out of the dojo because you don't know who you may be training with, who may be watching you, and having a good attitude will get you to go to another practice, another practice, another practice, another practice. Like I met so many people. I was so lucky. And I think it had to do with just the attitude that I had. And I was lucky to be practicing with the people I was practicing. I ended up practicing with Teramoto Sensei, with Kunitomo. I ended up practicing with Uchimura. I ended up practicing with a lot of like all this famous Kenshi just because I was lucky enough to someone see that I'm trying to learn and they wanted to do something good back for me. So having that attitude is key in order to get a good experience in Kendo in general.
So, in your personal opinion, I know my view on this. Is it more important to be willing to learn than to be good at kendo?
I don't think one come without the other one because you'd have to define being good at Kendo, right? So like, what do you mean being good at Kendo?
In your head that you're good at kendo.
Oh, nothing in your head is a good idea.
Yeah. So like these are mentality. Sorry. Should have clarified the question. It's like in your head, should it be, I'm willing to learn or I'm good at kendo, if you're training in loads of different places or you want to get better.
I mean, like ideally, you want to get better at Kendo. You want to learn more, and actually, Chris Yang from Team USA, he actually, uh, you know, we were having a conversation at a time when I practiced with him, and one of the things that he said to me and stuck with me, it's always ask yourself why. If you keep the why in your head, why is it not working? Why is this happening? Why did this work? And always kind of like have that is going to be a better mentality than, oh, I got that point. I'm going for that point. I'm going to get it. Oh, I am the best. It's like, yes. And I'm going to tell you, I don't think you're going to find a much more confident person than he is, right? Because he's very confident in what he does and how he does it. But he got there or for what I can tell, is questioning why is this thing working or not working. So I think that always helps to have that mentality over I am the best, I am going to be the best, nobody can touch me, and so.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say is like the best for, well, not beginner, somebody who's been doing kendo for 2 years and they're feeling, when you get to like shodan and you're like, but I know everything, why am I getting better? And like there's a small stagnation at that point. And like most people, I think the highest drop off point for kendo is when they passed first dan. So how can we help them, or like what would you say to somebody who's thinking about dropping out because they don't think that they can do much more? Hard question. Like,
I think I understand your question, and this is actually a conversation that I had with my sensei when we're talking about recruiting people to come into the dojo. And I think the same question should be at that point as it is at the beginning. It's like, what's fun in kendo for you? Why is it fun for you to keep doing kendo? Everybody's going to have a different answer, and everybody needs to answer this question for themselves. And always remember that you're doing this not because you're getting paid to do it. Because I mean, if you are, please tell me how you're getting paid, because I wanna get on that boat. But uh, why is it that you started doing it? Why is it that you kept doing it? And just find something that's fun for you. It might not be the same reason why you started it, right? Because I started kendo because of a friend, and it was fun for me to spend time with my friend practicing together. But then he quit, right? So then for me, it became fun. Something, I found fun in something else, and something else, something else. So always find out what's fun for you to do in kendo, and maybe going to more competitions is more fun. Maybe stop going to competitions for a while is fun. Maybe watching the videos and replicating what's happening in the videos is fun. Maybe doing being able to do more kakarigeko is fun. Some people might like that, but I mean, I do enjoy. I enjoy kakarigeko a lot, but like everybody needs to find their fun in kendo, and what is it that they need to do to keep that fun going. Because even high performing athletes for the police departments in Japan, they enjoy kendo, right? They didn't go that path because they were forced into it. They at some point something happened. Then maybe when they started little and their parents made them, it was boring. But at some point something happened that made it fun for them. You need to keep that fun going for you. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, thank you. Like I ramble a lot, but once in a while I say something smart. So
I mean,
yeah.
I definitely ramble way more and say way less smart things currently.
I guess. Go ahead.
If we could kind of focus a bit more on Shiai for like the last 10 minutes, because I know you
Okay.
have a lot of Shiai experience.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I think
I
that
do.
would be really beneficial to
Okay.
not
So
distribute,
tell
but
me, tell me. Okay, what need? I mean, I do have a lot of experience, Shai, winning and losing. But what in specific you want me to share with you about Shai?
on this. Have you ever had any very bad experiences in Shiai which you thought you were never going to recover from, and how did you recover from that? Or it's just been clean sailing and nothing's been wrong ever, and you've won every match?
I definitely haven't won every match. I do have several first places and several second and third places and whatever. But I'm going to say that one of the first struggles that I had with Shiai, it's understanding that anxiety before a fight. And understanding what type of reaction I should have to that anxiety. I remember one time being in a Shiai, and this is the point where like I'm in an. Let me just give you a little background. I was in an area where people knew me, and the people knew that I was good. I was in a team because I told you I traveled a lot, so I was never coming in with a team. A lot of times, teams will pick me up and have me there. So I was with a team that had a lot of confidence in me. And then I remember before going to a match, turning around and asking one of my partners in the team, asking, why do I keep doing this to myself? Right? Why do I keep putting myself in this situation of anxiety? Because you do feel it, and it's very real. But one cure to say like this that I found for that, it's telling myself that it's natural. If I didn't feel anything, I wouldn't be there, right? And understanding that your mind is going to challenge you at every point where you don't feel comfortable means that you're growing, and getting over that hurdle, like getting over that problem, will make you a better kendoka in general. So for me, it's like even going into a fight. I had a sensei once say, like, it's easier to quit than it is to keep going, right? So you can have, and you can be in a final match, you know, and your mind will be so messed up that will tell you, you already got a silver medal. Why are you gonna keep going? Just let him hit you, right? And your mind will start playing tricks with you. So it will be easier for you to say, okay, just hit me, and then I already got my second place and I'm fine. But it's not okay, right? You want to fight yourself and say, like, you have what it takes to be here. You have what it takes to keep going, right? And just learning that mental aspect of kendo is worth more than learning how to do kotemendo men men combination, right? Because with that mentality, you can get one technique and still get the win, whether than you have like a repertoire of 20 techniques, but then your mind breaks you down and then you cannot perform them. So I think a lot of times spend a lot of time trying to figure out what is it that physically I need to do to get better, where they need to figure out what is it that I need to do internally to get better. And I think that's number one. Um, when it comes to experience in Shiai, every Shiai is going to be different. And I'm going to tell you, you're not going to get a medal for going there. Thankfully, we're not to that point yet in Kendo where you're going to get a medal just for going, right? And you're always going to find somebody to fight in front of you. Somebody's going to try to defend that medal against you. So that's normal. That's the biggest advice. Um, okay, next question.
So, what was it like going from normal Shiai to the World Kendo Championships, and what were your nerves like?
Hmm. Okay, so the first time I attended to the World Championship, I think I was Nidan, if I'm not mistaken. And I I have gone to some international competitions at that point, but nothing like going over there. And I think that a lot of the problems that I had were mental over physical ability in there. Um, when I went to the World Championship, that thankfully I had found out that bit of knowledge of trying to make my practices as if I was in the Shiai and the Shiai as if I was in practice. So that helped me a lot to calm down. So one of the biggest factors that I think helped me uh, during that time, during and in general my Shiai, it's focus on what is it that you're doing there. You're doing there kendo. You're not going there to start talking to the people, to start seeing all the famous people and just seeing all the people around the match and stuff like that, because that's going to overwhelm you, right? So for me, it just became, I'm here to do kendo. I want to come here and do my best kendo. I went to the first world championship with the goal of belonging there. I want to make sure that I do kendo that belongs in the world championship, and that was my approach to training. So I had a lot of physical training when it came to like sprinting and gym and drills and schedules for practices and so on. But the biggest thing is focusing on what is it that you're there to do. And for me, it was just do kendo that belong there. Stay away from like all the like bad habits of like, being jumpy and just jumping around the core. And so like, no, just do a kendo that will 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 belong there. That was my goal when I was training to go there.
nice idea. But did you ever really experience any nerves, as in, just like,
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
like
like
listen,
listen,
like
like
this is the first time this is gonna go online, I guess, and only about 10 people knew this. But I forgot my dough when I went to fight at the first World Championship. I forgot it at the hotel thing completely, and I was so nervous. I was so overwhelmed. Like I remember the sensei, like that our manager, he gave me his iPod and said like, I want you to listen to this because you look so nervous, like I want you to like just distract yourself and you just go. And between the music and between all the stuff that I had to bring and all the stuff, like I forgot my dog. And I was completely like not knowing what was up or down or whatever. Again, seeing all the famous people, all the famous kendoka, everything, all of that kind of like builds up and starts creating tension for yourself. And luckily, I had some tools to help me overcome it. But ideally, that's one of the things that you need to prepare. You really need to prepare for that.
any advice for preparing for that? Because I know, like, especially like people in the first Shi are just like ball of nerves, shaking everywhere, and
Mm. I
I think
think for
for
that,
that,
um, my sensei, one of the things that he likes to, one of the analogies is that imagine like the tea kettle, right? Like it builds pressure until it's ready, and it doesn't let go of that pressure until it's ready, right? So going into that, especially at that level of Shia, is very important to just keep that pressure. Do not overestimate it or underestimate it. Do not. I don't like to go into the venue and start just talking to everybody and just having fun and laughing with everybody, because then all that pressure gets dissipated. And guess what? You're going to be way relaxed in the Shia, and most likely you're going to make a mistake because you weren't paying enough attention. Right? That's an internal thing. Or
or
also, do not keep all that build up all that extra attention that you don't need, that's not going to help you, by talking about, okay, tomorrow I have to fight this person, tomorrow I have to do this, I have to do that. That's unnecessary. So just focus on the things that you need to do, and do not stress yourself out with the other stuff. um, so in order to prepare for that, I think it's a good practice also to do it from before. Understand that, figure out the things that you need to do in order to do good kendo. So for me, again, I said like, communicate, pay attention to my opponent, go forward, and always be mindful of what my opponent is doing. So I try to keep that in mind and just kind of like do it as a mantra, just going over and over and over and over and over in my head as I go into the venue.
I think that's quite a nice note to leave off on, because I know you have time, and this has been, I think,
Yes.
one of our longest streams, and I am very
Oh
thankful
wow.
for
Okay.
everyone who's listening and has stuck by with the whole thing. I hope you have enjoyed. I know I have. Um, Next week we have special person lined up, and then there's a panel at the end of the month, which I really hope you'll all come to, and very excited. That has been a long thing in the making. Please check out his channel, Kendo Tips. He's definitely one of the best online senpais that you can get on YouTube, I'd say. Especially like the what's in your BOGO bag is like one of the handiest videos. I usually also have like a medical kit, because oh,
I may need to redo that video then. Yeah, you need to share some of that to me.
it's because I'm a first aider, so I need to have a
Oh,
medical
okay.
kit.
Well,
Yeah. I've seen some horrific things. Oh my god. But yes. I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Goodbye.
thank you. Thank you for